Bruce Dern. I'm good, how are you?
Every time I see it, I'm so thrilled I'm because I became an actor because when I was in college, I wanted to be a great runner. They let me in 1956 at 800 meters, and I quit college. I started going to a lot of movies. And I said, you know what? Those people are touching me. I'd like to learn how to do that. And I knew there were three things you had to do. I was in Philadelphia. You had to go to New York. You had to try and become a member of the Actors Studio. And you had to work for Mr. Kazan.
So you just watched the film with us. What is it like? I mean, you spoke about it a little bit, but what's it like every time you rewatch this film, sort of situating it in your
I
career?
haven't seen it now in 30 years. He made it in 1969. And so that's what, 54 years? Yeah. Anyway, I have a long history with Sydney Pollack. Not that long, but I don't know what you know about Sydney, but he and his brother Bernie grew up in South Bend, Indiana. Their father owned the pharmacy on the Notre Dame campus. So that's where they grew up. And I first met Sydney when he was an assistant for John Frankenheimer in New York, 1959. And Frankenheimer was doing a movie about three kids that killed a kid in a playground. And they were Puerto Rican kids. And the odds were stacked. You never knew really what happened. You see it vaguely what happened, but, and that's when Sydney was his assistant. And in those days, we all kind of started merging at the same time. Sydney Pollack, Brian Hutton, Mark Rydell, Bob Mulligan. I don't know the names out, but I forgot. So anyway, I'll never forget them. I'm going to give you an alphabetical list. But what thrilled me about it was the only thing you could do back in New York, except the theater, which I did because I was under contract with Mr. Kazan for 5 years. You had 5 of us. You had Rick Torn, Pat Engel, Lucy from Winnetka, Geraldine Page, and Bankroll, whose name then was Ann Ercolani. She came out here and they put her in a bunch of biblical movies. And so she went back there and she got to the Actors Studio and changed her name and came back as Anne Bancroft. And I think the thing I liked most about Sydney was he never talked about it a lot. He talked about it, but he wasn't feeling when he was talking about it. Say hello to this. I couldn't have made this movie. But when you look at the work of those two women in the same scenes at the same time, and neither one of them crazy as a shit house rat. it was just a pleasure. I had done a movie for Sydney 6 months earlier in Yugoslavia called Castle Keep. And starred Burt Lancaster and a whole bunch of us guys that were on our way out. Tony Bill, Michael Conrad, Felice Orlandi, Michael Sarrazin, just a whole group of people. And what Sydney did was, he saw a piece of material and he saw what he could make it better with. And it was only in movies. We had to see it, and not in the theater. We had to see it, in a movie theater. And therefore it was exciting to be around him because he knew who I was. And he knew I wasn't Dabney fucking Coleman. Who he couldn't really write part of the play. But anyway, the thing that I liked most about him was my wife, Diane Ladd, who was Laura's mother. She and I lost a child drowned in a swimming pool when she was 18 months old. That was on a Friday night. Monday morning at 8 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Sydney Pollack. He said, "How far do you live from 4 Star? It's now called CBS Television Center, but it was called 4 Star then, across from DuPont." And we missed DuPont. And anyway, he said, "How long would it take you to get to 4 Star?" I said, "Well, I can usually run it in about 9 minutes, but I'll come in the car." He said, "Get over here. I want you to play the lead in this episode of The Law and Mr. Jones." When I got to the studio, I had a pass. I didn't have to show a bunch of shit to get in. They took me to a sound stage, and outside the sound stage was standing James Whitmore, who was the star of The Law and Mr. Jones. And I guess he had mentioned to Sydney, "Do you know what happened?" And he was the one that instituted the beginning of it, but Sydney really enacted it. And that always made me think that he had something magical down the road for me. And unfortunately, he passed away just before Nebraska came out. Otherwise, I think he'd have been proud of me. I hope he would.
Absolutely.
And what I liked about Sydney was his best friend was a guy named David Rayfield. And David Rayfield was married to Maureen Stapleton. And she was a whole different story. No, she was just a terrific actress. And David was a bookie, And he helped. He was like a script doctor. I don't know that I think he only wrote one film that he produced, but he helped out an enormous amount of films. Kind of like Mike Cimino did after The Town turned its back on him. He assisted movies getting where they can crank and turn on the camera. And when I look at this, I think to myself, Gig Young won the Academy Award for this performance. And Jane and Susanna, but only one was for Best Actress. Susanna was for Best Supporting Actress. But people forget that's the killing of Sister George, Susanna York. And I was never aware. On Fridays, at noon, lunchtime, I had to drive Bonnie Bedelia down to Hollywood High School from Warner Brothers to take a biology class. She was only like 21 years old or something like that. And the first time I met her, privately, like where we went out to dinner or something like that, she said to me, I said, why? I didn't get your name. And I was working with her every day, but I didn't know that. She had a kind of hippie hat flown down over her face, and she was always hiding, but never unseen. And there were a lot of them in that age, in the late 60s and early 70s, that came out of that. Another one was a girl like Susan Anspach, you know. I mean, they did extraordinary work when they were working. And I think the thing that I like most about Sydney is he collected us. But we never went and had a meal with him. I mean, I remember every year for a while, or every 5 years, we had a dinner party for the cast of everybody that was in Castle Keep. And Sydney put on a party and rented some Italian restaurant somewhere. We'd all go to it. And I think the thing I'm proudest of here, when I asked tonight, you know, how many people could I ask to come to it that have never seen it? It didn't shock me, but for a long time, we couldn't get a print of it.
Right.
You know, Eddie Brandt finally helped out a little bit, but he didn't have one. But he found one that could be copied and out of that and this. And then I think at one time, Scorsese was involved in the restoration of the film. But what I was pleased about tonight, it holds up, man.
Oh yeah, it does. Relevant and modern, and the filmmaking is just so, I mean, thematically it feels very relevant and modern, but the filmmaking is so exciting and experimental, and you know, I wonder, when you saw it for the first time, some of those flash forwards and things, I mean, was that in the script? Did you know that's how he was going to do it, or was that surprising to you?
Well, the only time that I had a director say something to me about somebody other than me was when, for 10 years, no one would make Nebraska. They didn't want to make it in black and white. They didn't want to make it with me because all I could do is kill people in movies or be a prick. So nobody thought I could be funny or anything else like that. So I went up and I saw him, and we talked for about 20 minutes, and John, his casting director, was the only other guy in the room. And he said, we talked 10 minutes. He said, come over here and sit by me on the couch. And he said, I want you to do my movie. And it's been a long trail. And there was no one that went unseen. Well, I was thrilled to hear that.
This is Alexander Payne.
Huh?
This is Alexander Payne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alexander said, so you got the role, but I do have to see one other person before I see you. I said, don't pull Bobby Valhalla. Don't pull all these guys out there a little older than me.
Dabney fucking Coleman.
I said, no, I have to see one person. And he said, I'll call you tomorrow afternoon when I'm done. He called me at 4 o'clock. I was driving in my car. And he said, you got the part, and I'll have my people call on Monday morning to Paramount to make your deal and everything like that. But you can tell your agents, you know, it's coming. And I said, what did you have to see? And he stopped me. He said, Carol Ballard, because Carol Ballard can shoot people. And he said, he's a great cameraman, never gets a thing. He directed a few movies, didn't he? But anyway, that was interesting. Well, Sydney had a bunch of people like that. And I don't know how he got to be friends. I mean, how did he get to be John Ford? So you can only see you with one eye. And these were all giants to me. I mean, yes, I was under contract with Mr. Kazan. When I came out here, got ready to get on a plane, he let me use his limousine to go to the airport. And he went with me in the back of the limousine, because he was going someplace else like Fire Island or some goddamn place. He said, come on. And the car got to the place, and he said, you got your date, and you got your tickets and all like that. And he said, I just want to tell you something. When you get out there, nobody's going to know who you are or give a shit who you are. Believe me. And a lot of them are going to be excited that you're in the contract to me. A lot of them. And that shocked me because I wasn't aware of it. Although my uncle was Archibald McLeish, and he directed JP on Broadway. And I mean, wrote it also. And so I've always felt the neatest way I can judge somebody immediately, can they fill a doorway? Now Charlize Theron fills a doorway. And every now and then Gregory Peck filled a doorway for me. I mean, there's just something about an aura or a good thing about him. And Sydney had a collection of people like that, but tried to keep his hand in the norm. And his casting of all these people in the movie, he made them go through hoops because they had no idea what they were talking about, and what the movie was about. And the world record for dance marathons, they outlawed them in California in 1936, which was the end of the Lick Pier. And the Lick Pier is where they had the glass floor, so while you're dancing out there, you're looking down the fish. And then they demolished that and built the Venice Pier. And that's where, it was the Lick Pier where they held these contests, either here or in Atlantic City. A guy named Frank Lankowski set the world record. And get this, 73 days. Frank Lankowski then came to Hollywood.
Was he the consultant on this film?
No.
Oh, I know there was some participant in these marathons who worked on the film.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
People like that. But I mean, they were all kind of like red buttons at the end of the movie. They looked at the movie and they couldn't believe they did that. And they couldn't believe the thinking that was going on in their head that would make them do that.
Right.
And so...
Sorry, Frank Lankowski.
Yeah, Frank Lankowski came out here and he changed his name. And he changed his name to Frankie Lane. And he sang Those Spiders in the Sky.
Oh my God.
And that's Frank Lankowski. Just a Polish kid from Atlantic City. But he won that in 1933.
And he set the record.
Huh?
He set the record, the world record, you said.
Yeah,
oh my God.
73, well, 73 days, excuse me.
I'm so curious if you have any memories of like shooting the derby scene, like how was that done? I mean, were you shooting in order or?
That goddamn siren went off. Everybody headed for the doors, because we were shooting Warner Brothers, so we couldn't see the ocean or anything like that. And then it wasn't until halfway in the movie, till we started with 94 couples. And they reduced it down real quickly to like 60 couples. And those were the people he really wanted to make the movie with, although he hadn't shot any derbies or anything. And it was in about, let's say the film took 55 days to make. About the 30th day, they introduced the derby.
So they're basically doing the same thing to you, to the actors, that they did to the dancers.
Not only that, but Sydney also knew that I was a very good runner and a marathon runner. And the third day we started working, Bonnie and I, Bonnie comes to work and I kind of pick her up and we start moving around because we were shooting. And they shot 10-minute magazines, and the first, they built a figure-8 railroad track around the floor for the camera. And they had a guy in a bucket. I mean a real wheelbarrow, not a bucket, a wheelbarrow. And the wheels of the wheelbarrow were on the track. And the camera operator was Duke Callahan. And he was in there with the Aeroflex. And he would go around, they had a little 2 horsepower motor on the thing. So it weaved in around us on the floor, so everything he was getting was a close-up. And that was the first steady cam I ever saw. And it was just so innovative. And I think the thing that, if I miss anything today, and I didn't miss a goddamn thing, especially because and even now here, and is that there is something about all of you that are here tonight that Sydney Pollack made movies for. He made movies for art theaters, but he couldn't get them released in an art theater because they weren't Kubrick. And Kubrick was already doing shit that nobody could believe they did. And I come along later and go to work for Douglas Trumbull. And when I tell people I've worked for 6 directing geniuses in my life, and not in order of importance or anything like that, but they would be Mr. Kazan, Mr. Hitchcock, Douglas Trumbull, who no one ever mentions or knows who he is.
Can we get a Douglas Trumbull retrospective, guys?
We did Silent Money together, so that was it. And he had a friend, he said, Bruce, do you know this lady singing? I said, yeah, I know her. I mean, she's around every time he sees Cesar Chavez. Show me play us. She wrote all the songs for the movie, sang them, and her orchestrator, who did all of music for a long time, was a guy named Peter Schickley. Peter Schickley did one album, and it was called PDQ Bach. And it came out in 1959 or 1968 or 69. And that's what Sydney did. Sydney put together, I mean, he had his little group of guys. There's nobody like Quinn, but there's nobody like Alexander Payne. Alexander Payne said to me the first day on Nebraska, and it was cold. It was October. There's no sun there anyway. But in October, November, there's absolutely no sun. And it's cold. And you see your breath on a 70-degree day because you know it's coming. And he said to me the first day, he said, you see anything here you've not seen on the screen before? Or in a movie company, first morning. I said, I do. I see everybody seems to be pulling their oar. He said, well, hopefully. That's because we have 89 people here, and 79 have worked every day on every film I've ever made. Quentin the same way. He's got, Kazan had about 25. They build these teams, and they pick up their teammates along the way. And I was so proud when Alexander told me that he saw Carol Ballard, because he said, I gave the script to Carol Ballard. He said, I could shoot this, but I take too much time. Because I'm not, everybody says, well, you're maybe the best cameraman. He said, no, I'm not a cameraman, Bruce. I'm a lighting cameraman. And in Britain, they all call themselves lighting cameramen, you know, because it's more than just, you know, do this and that. And so I was lucky enough to come at a time when you guys were in every theater we'd go to, because all the people who's Sydney's age group, that group of guys and girls would come along, and people forget Joan Macklin Silver.
Yes.
I mean, she did Hester Street, and I forget those other non about the Jewish communities in New York and everything like that. So it was fun to go to work, because you never know who would have been invited that day, you know. And it's exciting to come in here and see that you people give a shit.
Thank you so much for being here. We talk about kind of all the filmmakers you've worked with, and it's kind of a bleak question, but I think it's appropriate considering the theme. Are our best days of film and television behind us or ahead of us?
So the question is, are our best days of film and television behind us or ahead of us?
Well, the movie business is struggling. The movie business is struggling, and it's struggling because the folks have forgot how to go to a movie. And now when the streaming came in, these guys think they're making movies because they make them fast and they pay good salaries to actors, so they get the actors together. And now all of them are striking because they want a piece of the streamers. And they're saying no. In 1960, the governor, the president of the Screen Actors Guild was Ronald Reagan. And he struck in the summer of '60, actors struck, and everybody went out with him. And it was all over the residual. And that's when the residual came in. And that's why when you look at your regular TV and not the streaming channels or the cable channels so much, you never see movies from the '60s. And that's because they had to pay residuals. Yeah. So they're after. Well, we just won't show the goddamn things. I mean, just the other day, they show my movie every week now, the Black Sunday movie. But it's a good movie. It's the only movie, incidentally, that I ever made that I would never, ever make again. And people say, why? Because someone could do that. And why give them ideas? And Robert Shaw says it very clearly when he meets with the Egyptian ambassador in the movie. You know, he said, take a look at the girl's picture. There's a girl you want to see, Jaya Ayad, who they didn't know then was married to Carlos. So she was the biggest terrorist there is. And at Munich, when you see the people and the guy in the Bermuda hat and the shorts negotiating, with the prisoners and everything like that, that was her. That was not a guy. That was her. And so that's why I wouldn't make it. It's scary. I mean, you think a blimp can only go 60 knots. It can't go above 4,000 feet because it'll explode. Helium explodes. So it's just that I remember all this because I feel privileged to be in that group of people and that would take on projects like this. You couldn't get this movie made today. They look at that and say, what, are you kidding me? Without a disco song? This summer. But, so anyway, I'm delighted to hear. And any questions you want to say? Yes.
Okay, another question. Okay, right back there.
This movie was a huge hit. Could you just talk a little about what you remember about how it was received and the audience reactions?
The question is about the movie's reception, that it was a hit, it was a commercial hit, the audience reactions. Do you remember what it was like when the film came out and people...
It did very poor business the first 2 weeks, and then they pulled it after 2 weeks because nobody wanted to see it. Now, first of all, it's just a 70-page novelette by James Poe, and it was adapted then by the guy now. I mean, it did the adaptation of it, and so it wasn't popular. It was a novelette. It was a paperback. It never went into a big thing like that. But I'd grown up with people in my home. I'd grown up with my uncle, Paul McLeish. I'd grown up with my dad's law partner, who was my godfather, Adlai Stevenson. So I had folks at the dinner table who could get you done, trust me. And they were interesting. And I wasn't allowed to talk, which is why I go on forever now. So I just listened. And it was really unique because my father's father was the first non-Mormon governor of Utah, George Dern, and then Roosevelt in his first cabinet made George Dern Secretary of War. And all he did between 32 and 36, where he died while he was in office, he did two things of note. He granted the Philippines their independence, and he mechanized the army because they'd been blitzed because we didn't have the big guns and everything in World War I, and that's why we were at a disadvantage, so they wanted to do that. But what I love about the first movie I ever saw that got my attention, and I had to become an actor about a month before I saw it, was The Killing by Stanley Kubrick. And why? Because every goddamn character in that movie's alive and you don't know who the hell is up to what. And that's why I love Mr. Hitchcock.
Yeah.
I mean, Mr. Hitchcock did the most amazing thing I've seen in my career. At the end of the first day, he got up and Howard Cassandra was the first AD, and he said, Howard, I like a word with my crew. Okay. He went to the apron of the stage, where you were sitting. He turned around, and the crew was about 75 people. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for quite a wonderful first day. You know, mild applause, thank you, we gotta go to the Dr. Game. So, thank you, sir. He took his hands and he cupped them loud like this. He said, personally, everybody stopped. Alfred Hitchcock, in 1975, with the last of the plastic hearts. He got number 7 in his chest. No notes in his hand, no earplugs or anything noted me. He walked around that set and thanked 72 people by their first goddamn name. The thing about all the directors that grew up in our age, so to speak, was that there was, and I don't see it on sets anymore, there's no reverence for what went before. There is no feeling that we know we're not inventing the wheel, but at the same time, we're expressing ourselves. Don't take film away from us, for God's sake. You can't do that. And you can't see it on a box. You know, oddly enough, Alexander Payne and, well, they didn't happen when Kazan was around, but Alexander Payne, or nor Mr. Hitchcock, nor several other people ever had a camera in black. And it just wouldn't happen. And so it was, it's revolutionary. I can't knock that. I can't knock these people, you know, that make the movies. Lulu was, I forget her last name, who directed that movie that got nominated for an Academy Award 3 years ago, and the lady won an Oscar for it. I forget what it was called, but it was about...
Was it not Lulu Wang? The Farewell? The Farewell?
Yeah.
Lulu Wang?
Lulu Wang.
Yeah.
And anyway, so go ahead. I got a couple more.
Right here in the middle.
I was just, like you said, revolutionary. This film feels so much like Network, which came a little bit after it, but for me, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm just a photographer, and I like to watch stuff that is filmmaking in like a different language that I didn't feel like I had a part of, and this is very new to me, so seeing stuff like that, and what was it like to be part of the team that had such existential questions? You know, I don't feel like as a woman I've seen a lot of these questions posed about keeping a baby during times that are hard. Sorry, I'm nervous, my voice is shaking.
Well,
and yeah, so what was it like to,
thank you.
You know, we asked about these things. And, yeah.
That's a wonderful question, because when you think of 68 to 76, that's when you saw a lot of movies. They used to show on television now, but I mean, out of that, you're starting with, Basic Forces. It was Charlotte and Winkler's second movie. The third movie was Rocky. So that gives you an idea where they come from. But what it was like was neat. Because we all felt we were together. And I don't mean union members or this or that or the other thing. I just mean we felt we were part of a team that was going to try and push the envelope. But we didn't know that's what we were doing, because that's what guys like Henry Jaglin have been doing for 10 years already. And Jack directed a couple movies. And we all worked for Roger Corman for a decade, you know. And so what was like was you felt included, but you never went to somebody else's set because they never wanted you there, because they didn't want you to see what they were telling the other actors or talking to get them to do what they did. And the most specifically grand thing I ever heard said about movies, we made a documentary, 6 of us, called A Decade Under the Influence. And Ted Demme, Jonathan Demme's brother, directed it. It's all about the movies of the 70s. And there's 3 actors, 3 producers, 3 writers, and 3 directors from the 70s. And Marty Scorsese is the last guy that kind of sums it all up for everybody. I'll give you an example. Ted Demme said to me, "Okay, Bruce, what are you going to do after you retire?" And I said, "Retire? You think I'm going to retire so Jimmy fucking Kahn can get a part from me?" And so then the last one is Marty Scorsese. And he said, "You know, I come out here and talking to an audience thinking he's in the theater, but that's what it was for anyway." And he said, "I tell you what, I make movies. I've made some good ones, I've made some other kind. But I'll tell you what, I could not make a movie like George Lucas makes, or like Steven makes, or like these particular guys make. And he said, because of the wizardry, the preponderance to make money fast, and not shove it down people's throats anymore. If they want to see a good movie, let them go to an art house if you can find one that isn't, Karen Bass isn't trying to fill up with something, And so, I think, and then Marty said, so I don't think I could do that. But at the same time, as great as that is, and as, explosives going off, and things in air, and all that kind of stuff, I don't think I could do that. But at the end of the day, on all those great movies that we're having, I miss the people. And Sydney tried to do that, and he and Redford went their way for a long time, and then Sydney would try things. I mean, Sydney's got the biggest part, the second biggest part in Eyes Wide Shut. And only because the guy died. And he wanted Sydney there to help direct the rest of Stanley Kubrick's stuff. And he wouldn't even get into that. I mean, he just... And the other thing is, one director would go to another director, put his arm around them, and just walk. And neither one would say anything, but they were arm in arm. You see it at film festivals, you see it everywhere you go. I won a Palme d'Or at Cannes about a gazillion years ago for Nebraska. But the reason I call those 6 people geniuses, I stopped incidentally at
We need the final 3. We got Mr. Kazan, Mr. Hitchcock.
Oh, Mr. Hitchcock,
Trumbull.
Douglas Trumbull, Quentin Tarantino, Alexander Payne, and
Sydney Pollack.
Lisa's out there, she'll know who that
Oh, Francis!
But it was, Francis Coppola.
Thank you.
And the reason everybody says to me, well, why do you call them geniuses? And you know what they're geniuses? And you know why Hal Ashby isn't there and John Frankenheimer isn't there? And a lot of really tremendous filmmakers aren't there. It's because of their approachability on the set to any member of the crew 24 hours a day. Even Mr. Hitchcock, I said they're all professors. They want you to come up and say, and the question that they'll ask you is, what is my specific job? This is a lighting guy on the 4th arc up there. He said, Mr. Hitchcock, what is my job in this shot? And he'll tell you exactly what your job is in the shot. And that's why they were geniuses. And their tolerance of the whole day. They love the day. And I've never worked with, I did work with a couple guys. It was their first movie they ever did. But the most exciting thing that's happened to me in the last 8 or 9 years is you guys. When I can come into a room and it's packed with people that give a shit. They're people that know what these people were trying to do. And if you re-release these movies, they couldn't make it because the theaters wouldn't play them. And they'll say, well, what do you got with it? I'll play it with Jaws. But I mean, that's that's the biggest thrill to me, that there are still enthusiasts that want this and try and do it one way or another. And we gotta keep going.
Indeed. Can't thank you enough for sharing your memories and your knowledge and, you know, passing this all along to us, all of the enthusiasts who are here. So thank you so much for being here.
I love King of Marvin Gardens.
Attaboy.